Okay. Are you done with church?
Sure.
Okay. Paul.
Well, not
Saul
really.
and Paul. Oh, that'd be a
Not
good little
done
clip for
with
YouTube.
church.
Are you done with church? Sure.
Yeah.
That's all. That's the promo.
The word is ecclesia. Now, Jesus said, I will build my church. He used that term, ecclesia. It's a word that means wherever two or three are gathered, they carry governmental influence. It's a secular term referring to a secular institution that is planted within society to represent the government, a government, and to bring about change through that governmental representation. So having said that, it gives great insight into what Jesus meant when he said, where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst. So he could have used a term that talked about the corporate gathering. Mm-hmm. He could have used temple. He could have used synagogue. He could have used anything to describe the people of God. But in this case, he was describing the people of God in their transformational role. That whenever the two or three are gathered and they make that commitment together in prayer to a task, they actually are representing heaven to establish his order and his influence in that secular environment.
Mm.
So we're really talking about the idea that Jesus gave these clues.
Yes.
And what you suggest in the very beginning of chapter 9 is, that these three terms that you want to break down, apostle, church, and Paul, were very specifically chosen by the Holy Spirit as secular terms to give us this clue that life isn't about going to church and then going home and then working a secular job. Life is about infiltrating all forms of society.
Yes.
And our kids almost get it sometimes and have to almost explain it to to this generation because where we're coming from, and I think it's important to say this, Bill, is because I think my grandparents believe the opposite of this. I think there was a misinterpretation oftentimes of be ye separate, come out from amongst the world and be separate. And so if a radio was in your house way back in the 30s and the pastor came over, you had to hide it in the front closet, because the world was going to be a force to take the righteousness out of us.
Exactly.
So it took my parents' generation, really, a lot of them in that generation, for my dad to even look at his parents and say, you're sincere, but you're sincerely wrong. Mm-hmm. Because TV and or radio are neutral. Only the intention of the person owning it and programming it makes the difference of whether it's a force for good or evil. So we're coming from the pendulum swing way, way over here, and it's almost like my parents, my kids' great-grandparents were one end of the pendulum swing, and they're feeling that pendulum swing come over as we're getting this.
Exactly.
Okay. I think that's where we're coming from historically.
That's exactly right. And what Jesus did is he approached everything differently. Let me give this example. Old Testament, you touch a leper, you become unclean. Jesus touches a leper, the leper becomes clean. Mm-hmm. It's completely different. Mm-hmm. Old Testament, you don't associate with the sinner because it will contaminate you. If I spit on somebody's offering, I have contaminated their offering. But in the kingdom, it's completely different because it's the believing spouse that sanctifies the spouse. So it's the power of righteousness in the kingdom that is resident in the life of a yielded believer. That power transforms the world around them. And that's where our faith has to be.
And that's where we are to pray, thy kingdom come.
Exactly.
And thy will be done.
Yeah.
But then walk it out. So we're learning to walk it out.
Yep.
Okay, that's
Yep.
why we're sitting here today, because we're learning stuff. Okay, are you done with church?
Sure.
Okay, Paul.
Well, not
Saul
really.
and Paul. Oh, that'd be a good little
done
clip for
with
YouTube.
church.
Are you done with church? Sure.
Yeah.
That's all. That's the promo. Okay, go ahead.
Well, Paul is the most forceful, influential person in the New Testament, apart from Jesus himself, obviously. But he was a Jewish leader. He was a rabbi of rabbis. He was a genius of geniuses, trained under the top rabbi available, and he had great respect. And Saul is a nice Hebrew name, and Paul is not. Paul is a very secular Greek name. And when he went through a name change, it happened to be at a very critical moment where it is possible he was given the name after his encounter with Sergius Paulus. It's possible that after that encounter, because after that moment, it went from Barnabas and Saul being sent out in ministry, it turned in that moment to Paul, name change, and Barnabas. Paul was now mentioned first. Something happened in the encounter where he stepped into his purpose and destiny. And to have a guy like Saul be willing to have a name change that associated him with a more secular environment than his Hebrew roots is really astonishing. I don't know that we can appreciate what he had to go through emotionally and psychologically to embrace that name change, but he did. And he did it, I would assume he did it to better facilitate his role as a primary evangelist to the Gentile world.